My name is Clara Tate. I am 18 years old and I live in a small town called Cypress Ridge. Life here is pretty simple. Everyone knows everyone, and rumors spread like wildfire. I have always been somewhat of a quiet girl, not one to draw attention to myself, preferring to blend into the background. I spent most of my days focusing on school and my close friends. But things changed dramatically when I found myself embroiled in a toxic friendship with a girl named Jay in the 10th grade. Jay and I had been best friends, or so I thought. It was like a scene from a teen movie, full of laughter and shared secrets, until one day it all fell apart. Jay went behind my back and logged into my Snapchat account without my permission. Imagine my shock when I discovered that she had invaded my privacy, reading through my private messages and judging my every word. When she confronted me about everything she found, claiming to be the righteous one, I felt my blood boil. How could she not see how wrong she was? It was the beginning of the end for our friendship, yet I was still too naive to fully grasp it at that moment. As the months passed, our friendship became increasingly toxic. Jay spread rumors about me, flipped stories to make me look bad, and manipulated our mutual friends into taking her side. It became evident that many of our friends were cutting ties with her, but she still believed herself to be the victim. Jay was skilled at weaving lies, painting herself as the innocent party in our tale of betrayal. It was infuriating, especially when she reached out to an old acquaintance of mine whom I was not particularly close with, clearly trying to win allies in her war against me. Each time I heard about her new schemes, my heart sank deeper. Fast forward to the end of our senior year, and things had grown eerily quiet. Graduation was just around the corner, and I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I had hoped that we could simply coexist until the end of our high school careers. For a while, that seemed to be the case, until I overheard something that sent shivers down my spine. One of my friends, who had recently become close to me after recognizing the toxicity of Jay's behavior, mentioned that Jay had been planning to pick a fight with me on the last day of school. I could hardly believe it. She was going to try to start a public confrontation, and I desperately needed to find a way to protect myself. I rushed home that day and told my mom everything. She listened carefully, her expression filled with concern for my well-being. Her advice was straightforward. I should inform the school counselor about Jay's threats. It made sense to me. By documenting anything that might happen, should the situation escalate, I could ensure that responsibility for any fallout would fall squarely on Jay's shoulders. I felt a surge of empowerment as I took my mother's words to heart. The next day, I marched to the counselor's office and recounted every detail. I explained how Jay had not only betrayed me, but was still trying to instigate a fight, just as we were all on the brink of celebrating our graduation. After I spoke, the school coordinator decided it was best to involve the principal. The stakes were suddenly raised, and I found myself sweating a little as I was escorted to the principal's office. Once inside, the principal and the coordinator listened intently as I explained the entire situation. I could see Jay, who was sitting in the corner, becoming increasingly agitated. When they started relaying what I said, Jay's eyes grew wide. The confusion and denial flooded her expression, and I could hardly contain my satisfaction as she squeaked out, "Me?" I knew she was about to unravel. Her hands flew to her head, and she began to babble about how she had said nothing, claiming she was innocent. With every word she uttered, I felt a wave of victory wash over me. I could see that the principal did not buy into her act for a second. After some back and forth, I knew the moment had come. Jay was forced to admit that she had made a comment about blowing off steam on the last day of exams in front of anyone in her way. The principal declared that if anything disruptive were to occur, everything would be pinned on her. Every rumor, every fight, every false alarm, she would be held accountable, no matter the circumstances. The tension in the room was thick as I saw Jay's demeanor change. She went from blustering and defensive to a broken, wrecked version of herself the moment we left the office. I felt a sense of triumph that was hard to describe. A friend of mine had been outside the door and overheard the entire exchange. She rushed up to me, eyes blazing, and began screaming insults at Jay, calling her a liar and a coward. As I stood there, my heart pounding with adrenaline, I couldn't help but feel proud of how I had turned the tables. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt that I had gotten the best of Jay. It was a strange feeling, almost like I was the monster I always feared I would become. Seeing her break down was thrilling, but I was also conflicted. My mind was racing with memories of all the pain she had inflicted on me. I felt no remorse for her as I relished this moment. I had endured enough of her lies and manipulation to earn this small victory, but nothing ends neatly in high school. As the final classes wound down and graduation approached, I discovered just how deeply entrenched the conflict was. Jay had connections with some of our fellow students, and they were not going to let my victory go unchallenged. I started hearing whispers that Jay was rallying a group to confront me one last time. It felt like I had been thrust into the climax of a dramatic movie, where the protagonist is forced to face her nemesis once and for all. As the last day of school approached, my anxiety soared. I desperately wanted to remain above the fray, to not let her obtain satisfaction from provoking me. I decided that I had to confront this situation once and for all. I began rallying my own friends, those who had stood by me throughout the turmoil, because I knew there was strength in numbers. The thought of being cornered by Jay and her friends made me feel ill, but I resolved to stand my ground. The final day arrived, and tension filled the air. Preparations were made for the graduation ceremony, but all I could think about was Jay and whether she would follow through on her threats. As the doors to the school swung open for the last time, adrenaline surged through my veins. I could see Jay in the distance, still with that familiar smug expression on her face. A knot tightened in my stomach as I began to walk toward my friends who were waiting by the entrance, and then there she was, blocking my path. Jay marched up to me, accompanied by a couple of her equally toxic friends, and the confrontation was imminent. This was it, my moment of truth. My heart raced, and I could feel all the eyes of our classmates drifting toward us, waiting for a show. Jay opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off before she could even get started. "I know who you really are, Jay. I am not afraid of you anymore. I have stood by while you bullied me, and I refuse to let you do that to me any longer." There was a crack in my voice, but anger fueled my words. I felt empowered and brave, as if I had finally shed the mask of fear that had overshadowed me for so long. The tension from our standoff electrified the atmosphere, and my friends could feel the impending explosion. Jay recoiled at my declaration, her confidence slipping for the first time in a long time. For a moment, I wondered if she would attempt to retaliate with more lies or threats, but instead, she faltered. I could see the effort it took her to maintain her facade as she struggled to find her words. Then, to my complete surprise, she started to cry. I had never seen that side of her before. I had always regarded her as a person who thrived on the misery of others. Yet there she was, crumbling under the pressure. Whatever power she had once held over me shattered in that moment. I felt a strange mix of emotions. I thought I wanted revenge, and yet seeing her vulnerability startled me. Did I truly want to be the instrument of her destruction, or had I just wanted to reclaim my sense of self? As the scene unfolded, more classmates gathered around us, and I felt their presence like a safety net. They saw me, the girl who had been victimized, finally taking a stand against her oppressor. Their murmurs of support reinforced my newfound strength. I had won the day without resorting to violence or disgrace. In the days that followed, as graduation ceremonies soon filled the air with excitement and joy, there was no need for further confrontation. Jay had become entwined in her own web of deceit. Many students now regarded her with suspicion, with whispers trailing her as she walked by. I felt like I had woven my own narrative of redemption, and though my last day of high school was marred by tension, I stood strong in my newfound identity. Soon, graduation night arrived, and it felt surreal as I donned my cap and gown, walking across the stage to receive my diploma. The smell of excitement filled the auditorium, mingling with the scent of fresh flowers. I took a deep breath, grateful that I had escaped the toxicity, not just from Jay, but from the fraught period in my life. I had fought back, grown stronger, and learned the importance of standing up for myself. Jay's place in my life shifted from that day on. No longer was she the shadow lurking behind my back. Instead, she became a mere blimp on my radar. I realized that my victory did not solely hinge on seeing her downfall, but rather in finally embracing my strength and recognizing that I deserved to be free from her reign of terror. As I moved on from Cypress Ridge, I carried with me the lessons I had learned. Perhaps the greatest revenge was not ruining Jay's credibility, but instead stepping into the light of my own self-worth and understanding that true empowerment comes from within. And I knew with certainty that I was ready to face whatever awaited me beyond the confines of high school, stronger than ever before.